Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Gary Whillock, and today we're going to be talking about metal roofs and venting beneath the metal roof so the heat doesn't even get to the attic space. Now behind me you see a metal roof, and we're going to be actually taking a shot of that roof and see what the rooftop temperature, the sun temperature is on the metal itself. Then we're going to go next door, take a look at the temperature, house facing the same way, same sunshine exposure, what a composition roof, the temperature is on that, and get a comparison of that also. But today it's talking about venting, how to keep that heat from going inside your attic space. Okay, welcome back. Now we're here and I've got a little roof made mock-up of a roof, and what you're seeing here is how we create a venting system on top of the decking itself. Here's the decking. Now on this particular one we have a synthetic underlayment. This is not a synthetic underlayment that we would typically use for metal roofs. Also, we don't use white pine. This was handy at Home Depot, so we picked it up and made this mock-up. What we do use is yellow pine, hard yellow pine, and it does not split very easily. It does not soak up water like white pine. When you put this together, you want to decide how large you want the runners that are going vertically up the roof. For us, maximum is about 2 inches. 1.5 inches is ideal, but a 2 inch actually gives you a little more nail space, and you want to hit it on top of the rafters to nail that in. Going up the other way, we've got a couple different measurements. 16 inches is a good distance. You don't want to get too far between, because when you're walking on the roof then it's got a little too much give and you don't want to spring it down and not come back. So the other measurement that we typically use would be 18 inches, and that gives you great space. Now this is the actual venting system, but there's quite a bit more to it. And I'm going to show you, we've got this little block here. You see a couple of countersink holes in that, and it's pre-drilled, and these go on the face. So I'm going to install this, where I've already installed these others, right under the wood that is fastened directly to the rafter. Now that's an important step, and you want to fasten these very, very well. You also want to be very selective of what kind of fascia you have here. You want to know where the rafter tails are, and you want to know that you're hitting something with this and when you put the additional fascia on, because what's going to happen is we're going to put a 1x4 on here, and you need to play it out what kind of material to use. I recommend, I like to work with cedar. But it can split and crack fairly easily. Redwood's a good way to go. We're going to be doing a house in just a couple of weeks here that we're actually using Ipe on. That's IPE, Ipe, and it's a Brazilian walnut that is very hard, very dense, and it's a great way to go because it's not going to split, it's not going to do anything. But you still have to make sure that you fasten it well to the fascia and the rafters, and we use screws. You always want to use some sort of a screw. I don't like this one particularly because the head's too small, the shank is too fat. But you want to pick an appropriate screw, and typically we use like a deck screw of types, but you want to get one with the head big enough that it's holding the meat of the wood onto the fascia. We've had problems where people, we've let our guys nail them on, and the nails pull loose. When you start putting a gutter on and you start thinking about the gutter holding water, and you got wood nailed into wood that's soft, you really want to stop and think about that. So I recommend screws. I recommend them long enough to hit the rafter tail. Also at the top of the fascia, when you're going to go in, you'll notice that we'll put the screws going down, so it doesn't have a way of pulling it straight out. It has to leverage them off, makes it stay much better. Now what we're going to use to vent is, and what you see here is this product called Coravent, and you can see actually through it. I can actually see you through there, I can see the light outside, and so it has airspace. It gives you an air gap, but it keeps the bugs, the insects, all the little critters out. You sure don't want wasps and things flying in constantly into your attic. This would allow them to not, this would not allow them to get in. So that's what we recommend. So in between the blocks that go here is the venting itself. I do not recommend trying to put the Coravent, and this is the Coravent S400. I think it's exactly 1.5 inches this way and 1 inch this way. So it gives you 1 inch of breathing room all the way around the house. And that's what you want to do on the eave of the house, is vent that eave. So when you put a ridge vent on the top, you now have air that is getting hot and rising below the metal, starting to move upward towards that ridge vent, and of course pulling it in at this very bottom eave. Let me point that camera down just a little, see if we can pick that up a little bit better. So you can see this is the fascia here. This is like a 1x8, and below it is a subfascia, and actually 2x product, and that's ideal. The key to that is you better check and make sure that that's fastened on well, because a lot of times that was just put on with sinkers, 16 penny sinkers that could pull out if you get too much gutter weight on. So you want to start looking at how you're doing this and get some structural input so you know you've got it right. Now we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes, and you're going to see how we put on the fascia on this, and it becomes a really nice look. Now we got the Coravent up. I lost it. Now we've got the Coravent up high enough that it, below the 1x4 that's going to go on this is going to have a space of nearly 1/2 inch. So when you put the Coravent on here, it's going to be up high because your fascia is going to go up as high as your lath or your space sheathing that is up here. So the space sheathing is not on the end yet, so this is going to go up another 3/4 of an inch. So the fascia is actually going to come up and cover that. So you might even want to consider as your standard a 1x6 fascia on this. And of course you can go thicker also. One of the things that we've done is use some of the 5/4 board, which is ideal because it's actually a little more than 1 inch. It's like 1 1/8 a lot of times, which is a really good thickness to be doing this kind of an application to. And also with more width on it, so if you go a 1x6, this would drop down like this. You would have a bigger block to screw the fascia into and to screw the gutter through. I would really consider that if you can. You can't always do that depending on the size of the home. Typically, if you have a 2x6 fascia or a 1x6 fascia, you don't want to go larger than the 1x4, and I get that just because you want the aesthetics to look good. So that's when you need to make especially sure that you're getting that fastened in very good, and that angle screw is going to make a difference from the top of your 1x4, and then it's going to be covered by your drip edge, so you're not going to see it at that angle, and angle it down into so you're getting meat into the space sheathing, into the riser board that's in here, and into the rafter and decking itself that's there. I'll be right back and we'll take a look at this with the fascia on, and then we'll look at it with a little bit of metal on there. This is about venting below a metal roof, a standing seam metal roof, and we typically use, we're very picky about any kind of snap locks that we use. We just don't like a lot of them. I went by one of mine that I did 10, 12 years ago, and every time I think about the houses that we did, I go, man, I hope it's not pouring down so much that that liquid adhesion is causing that water to go over that small 1 inch bump that is really locking it together. I just don't like that process. You want to have something that really snaps. Some of the new snap locks, especially some of the 1.5 inch, that's just a straight up and locks and has a gasket in it. Those I'm beginning to get a lot more faith in. We need a little more time for me to really buy into that, maybe 5, 7 more years so we can get a few hurricane type wind motions going and see how good they really do. But I think that they're getting there with a lot of the snap lock, which is going to save a lot of labor. But for me right now, the double lock is the way to go. And that's the panels that we're going to be showing you here in just a few minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, an up close shot of this before we cover it up is right here. You can see I've got the last Coravent on. This is put on with a screw and a screw. Now when we put it on for real, we actually put a black adhesive in between this and the fascia, and in between the outside edge and the drip rail, which is a 1x4. That's going to be the drip rail on this. And then of course here's the block, and it's kind of hard to see with everything black, and then a block and then a block and a block between each one of these vertical pieces that go up the roof. And of course, we're going to call this space sheathing with the space decking that is the 1x4s. And again, I remind you that we do this out of yellow pine, not white pine. This is just for the sake of the demonstration of how to put it together. And then we fasten it on a roof. To make it faster, we actually fasten all of this with ring shank nails of the appropriate size, and number 10 and or a 12 if you can get them, or number 16 penny nails. So that would be a 3 1/4 inch, I believe it is. So here is the core vent. I'm not sure you can see through it. You can. Yes, that's nice. You can actually see my thumb through that. So that's pretty cool. And that's where the air is going to flow up. So it goes up in and has all this room to flow beneath the wood and definitely beneath the metal roof. So we're going to put that together and kind of show you how that works. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at here. It's a really great way to go. It's really a great way to go to keep your attic cool. Instead of it ever heating up, it's going to keep that heat out before it does that. Now, we're real picky about how to put this together because we've found things that don't work and had to go back and do repairs. You know how it is. You go back out, now you're not making money on another job, and all of a sudden you're spending money on the job you already did. So really think through how you want to do this. Use your hammer, use a pry bar, and see how well you really have these parts and pieces secured before you make the final decisions on what to use in all those parts. Now we're going to put on the fascia, or the drip rail, on top of the fascia, on top of the core vent. Then we're going to come back and take a close-up look at that, and then we'll put on some metal so you can see. We'll put on the drip edge, and then we'll put on the metal so you can see exactly how this all goes together. All right, so with the drip rail on, here you see, and you see I'm loose on this end, above the fascia, you've got the drip rail here, and then you see here that we've got the first lath strip. This is so you can properly nail the drip edge, so you can properly fasten it well at that very edge. And then all of them are on the vertical, and this gives you space. Now, how the air gets in is right here. I'm going to go underneath. I don't know if we can actually see this, but you can clearly see we've got a nice space there, and it's just dark with the black core vent. And then the air would pass in underneath here, which is very nice. Here I'm backing up just a little bit so you can see it. As the air flows in, it just passes through, and it's going up, hitting the panels, going up, hitting the panels. As the air gets hot, it's going to rise to the top. This is a very low pitch. I think we only have a 312 pitch on his here. Most of our roofs that we do are 412, 612, and up. And of course, today they get very steep. We're just doing a 1212, should finish that one up today. And those are ideal because the air really flows faster, really moves more. The lower the slope, the slower it does move, granted, but it still moves the hot air out before it gets into that attic. Now let's get the drip edge on, we'll get a couple of panels on. Okay, so now we have a drip edge on, and you can see how nice the profile looks. We've got a 2-inch drip edge. It's made to the pitch of the roof. And of course, now we primed all the wood, and when we put on new fascia, we prime it all the way around all 4 sides, and then seal the ends also. That really helps because water does trickle down if you don't have a gutter. If you have a gutter, the gutter should go behind here. Now you notice that we did not take the time to spackle this. This is just primed. It's not got the finished paint. We want to paint it before you put on the drip edge. So just keep that in mind. And if you guys are all roofers saying, hey, we don't paint, not that difficult to learn, not that difficult to hire somebody to come in and do it. If you want to help people get their house done right, that's the right order. Now you notice that it gives you a really great shadow profile here, and I really like that. So from the street, you're going to see that you have a profile, that you have a drip rail on top of the fascia, and that really makes it good. Okay, so here we have not only the drip edge on top of the drip rail. The drip rail, of course, has been primed. It should be painted before you put on the drip edge. In this case, we just wanted to show it so you could see that it was a finished looking product. And then when you get down and look at this profile, absolutely awesome. Now we did not bend the little ends of the little dog ears of the panels over, so that's sticking out and it's not been screwed down. I hope they don't slide down on us. But you notice that the drip edge is a nice fit, so it's not crowding the bottom of this too much. So this is a very nice fit for a 1x4. You know, if you had a bigger fascia here, a 1x6 would be great there. And you see the shadow line here. This is where the core vent, the air goes in. As the air goes into this space right here, it's coming up underneath, staying under the panels, and running all the way up to the ridge vent. Now we're going to address in another video coming up the ridge vent and how critical it is to get the right kind of Z-flashing for the top of this. So many of them leak, especially here in Texas where we get these incredible hurricane type winds. Occasionally they come all the way in from the Gulf Coast and blow like crazy, blowing water sideways. That's when you want to make sure you've got a ridge vent with a proper Z-flashing that's going to hold it. Now you see how nice this is all going to look when it comes together. You see right here the actual fascia. You see how nice and finished the drip edge looks. You see that the panels are bent underneath. Nothing can get in there. Nothing can get in there. With the core vent right there, nothing can get in there except for air moving up and moving out. So I hope this has been captured well in this video. That's always my big concern when I do these by myself. I can't really see how well I'm capturing them because I'm busy doing all these other things. So for your sake, I hope I did a good job and that it's working out well. But I hope that you can actually see that venting this can keep your house and attic temperatures so much cooler. And if you can keep your attic space here, so many of our air conditioning units are up in the attics, heating up to 140, 145 degrees inside the attic. If you can keep that air moving and keep that temperature inside the attic down to 110, 112 degrees on a hot day, you've really gained some momentum of getting ahead of those high utility bills. And that's really what we're talking about, is getting ahead of it. So this is a product, this is an assembly that over time is going to pay for itself. Now we figure it takes about 4, 5, or 6 years for you to get your money back off of the investment. So this is for homeowners that are going to take pride in their home, stay there long term. And this is really when people get involved in this. So many of the homes that we do, people maybe are going to move in a couple of years. That may not be practical for them. If they indeed plan to stay, not doing it just doesn't make sense, because once you get past that 5, 6, 7 years, now it's money in your pocket that you're saving. And I tell you, there's no better way to gain than to be saving money instead of it still going out and bleeding out in rising costs of energy. This is Gary. This has been fun. As you can see, I'm starting to sweat. It's a warm day in the shop. I only have a low ceiling of about 12 feet here, and it's a metal roof with no insulation, and you want to keep that heat out of your attic.